I'm Berge Ayvazian, Principal Consultant and Senior Analyst with Wireless 2020. The last couple of days we've seen at Mobile World Congress why the theme that they've given is mobile is everything. But the reality is, it's not that mobile is everything, it's everything is mobile. That is, the transformative effect of wireless and mobility on all the things that people and things are doing. And that's really the impact that we've seen. We've seen mobility in each of the domains of life, but more than life, into the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things has been a buzzword that's gone around. You see every booth has IoT somewhere in it, something about IoT. IoT is important because it takes mobile out of this domain stovepipe of the mobile industry, and it takes it out as the enabler that allows all the industries to benefit and to take it even into industrial sectors, into the government, into ways cities run, make them smart cities. So it takes this enabling technology of wireless and mobility and drives it out there into the world. So in reality, everything is mobile. So how does that affect the way Mobile World Congress is positioned this year? So one concern I have is that IoT somehow has been linked to 5G. That there's some limiting factor, there's some constraint in the current generations of wireless that doesn't enable IoT sufficiently, that we need a new generation of technology in order to make IoT come to life. Well, it's not at all true. In fact, we used to use this term M2M, machine to machine, to describe what today we're calling IoT. And the other characteristic of machine to machine is that it had vertical specializations by industry so that it had deep relevance to the specific industries that it's affecting. IoT is much more of a horizontal, and in fact it doesn't understand verticals and doesn't know what domains of expertise they need to have. They just collect a lot of sensor data, do a lot of activities out in the open, and then some other intelligence has to take that information and make it do something. So we need a crossover between this so-called future 5G IoT, which is extremely horizontal, and the current domain of IoT, which has deep vertical expertise and engages industries in the process of driving the application development. Because without that, there'll be a huge gap. We'll be sitting here between 2016 and 2020 wondering why 5G isn't here yet, why is IoT not fully enabled, why are we just dreaming about it and not implementing it. We need to get that gap filled today. Now, what does that mean? That means all the things that carriers, operators have been doing that were called 4G have to be accelerated, and they have to move on a much faster pace. So densification. Densification is not here and there. Densification is everywhere. Densification has to be not only in urban markets, but indoors. Not only where there's high concentrations of traffic, but in rural areas where there's no coverage, and we need to bring small cells to take the value of wireless and bring it out to the regions. In countries, developing countries that don't have the cost structure to support large base stations, let's support them on small base stations. NFV, why are we waiting for NFV? Why do we have this legacy environment holding us back that we have to virtualize? We need to come greenfield to NFV and start with platforms that currently can stack as many of the functions of new networks as we can, so that the operators are not constrained by the past as they move into the future. LTE Advanced comes with a huge set of features. Only a few of them have been implemented. Most of the carriers are still living in the pre-LTE Advanced world. If we don't move that bar quickly, the gap between 4G and 5G is going to continue to grow. The other day we had a press conference with the NGMN talking about the progress they made in the last year on 5G. And the discussion started, they opened to questions. There were 8 operators that are board members sitting around, and the first question was asked by me. You are presenting a status update that says, by 2020, we're going to be ready to deploy commercially 5G. Okay, which of the operators is prepared to say now that they're committed to be in the first group that deploys 5G technology? None of the operators was willing to make that commitment. I said, okay, not 2020. You won't be the first, maybe, but let's say by 2022. How many of these operators? Nobody would be willing to commit, because no one knows what the standard is, what the effect on their existing business is. Does that mean I have to stop 4G? Do people think the next generation is going to take over? So there's this kind of fear factor. We want to get to the future, but we're afraid that we are going to lose the benefit of the past. We're not going to see the ROI on that investment. So we have to decouple these things. We don't want 5G to be some crossing the chasm problem we don't know how to solve. Now, let's go to some specifics. We have seen here at Mobile World Congress a tremendous focus on densification, taking the power of LTE indoors, where currently, the minute you walk in, you lose coverage, you lose capacity, you lose the ability to be mobile. Enterprise buildings, but of course, every other high traffic venue. Now, for example, here at Mobile World Congress, with so many people in this huge space, mobile coverage is terrible, right? It's just as an example. But is this place filled with small cells? Well, it has some Wi-Fi from place to place you can connect to, but this should be a showcase for how small cells deliver the benefits of mobility throughout these venues, both upstairs and downstairs, as a small example. Now, we know that there are probably 300 or 400 vendors that are the market leaders in bringing densification, small cells, DAS, into these environments. We know that the small cell and DAS industries are converging. We know that it all relies on fiber. Fiber is the key ingredient to getting the capacity levels up. And once we bring these ingredients together and deploy them properly and have the kind of operators who know how to make money in that environment, we'll have a transformed way of providing mobile service. But mobile is not the fourth service. Mobile is the essential ingredient in all services that you provide, whether they're content, whether they are voice, just voice calls, SMSs. Mobility is what makes them work, makes them personalized, gives them to me to carry with me everywhere I go, and embeds them in all the things that I pump into as I go through my day, as we go through life. You know, Masayoshi-san, Masa from SoftBank, also gave an address. He hasn't been to Mobile World Congress in 5 years. And he didn't talk about Sprint, he didn't talk about the investments he's making in Japan. He talked about something called singularity, which probably people didn't understand. He said that in the near future, each of us is going to have 2 or 3 robots that are our representatives in the world. So we can't be in 3 places at once, but in our virtual life, our robots will represent us. And we will have a portfolio of things that will extend us into the world, and we don't have to necessarily have control of them all, but they're out there. They're all connected. And because of that, the multiplier effect of today, which we think about 1000x problem, he said it's going to be a 1,000,000x problem. So we look at the line, 1000x problem looks trivial compared to the 1,000,000x problem, right? It's astronomical, it's a huge curve. And when you start going up the slope of the 1,000,000x problem, you can't solve it piecemeal. You have to be solving it in a multi-dimensional way. We need the benefits of LTE Advanced, we need to drive it down to small cells. We need to virtualize it on the infrastructure so it's low cost. It's not a forklift replacement, but in fact the transition is smooth. We need new kinds of operators and business models that allow it to be true. and we need to bridge the gap between now and when 5G is going to be available. That's what I learned at Mobile World Congress.